All right, I think we're going to get started. Everybody, welcome to our second webinar that we've ever had. So this one is on training your managers and mastering employee engagement. This is something that we've been really excited about, that we talk to CEOs, business owners, COOs a lot about, especially in the small business arena. And so we're really excited. A little intro to us. If you haven't heard of us, I'm sure most people have interacted with maybe the two of us before. But we're Innovative Outsourcing. We have two different sides of our house. We have the recruiting side of our house that we do part-time and full-time positions in the admin, HR, finance, and some in the legal space. And so we've done that for 29 years. And then on the other side of our house is our HR consulting side. So we do HR consulting, HR outsourcing, and as I mentioned previously, HR placements. And then also we have something called an HR audit. So if you have no idea what you're doing with your HR, it's a tool designed to come in and kind of diagnose what you're doing well and what you're not doing as well, and then a 12-month plan going forward. And we bring HR directors in there that know way more that they're doing than definitely me, and maybe mom as well, because Karen Moss might know a little bit more. Maybe.
Definitely.
Uh, Definitely, probably. So we're going to go ahead and start. We are going to ask if you're currently on here and you want to start asking questions, please just write into the chat. I'll be reading all of those at the end. We'll have about 10 minutes for questions at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'll hand it over to Cindy, and we'll get started.
Well, hi, everybody. So glad that you're here today. Thanks for taking the time to join us, whether you're here live or whether you're listening to a recording. We just really wanted to bring a little piece of what I do when I speak a little bit around to CEOs, to everybody today in an online format, because we really need to continue to think about how do we retain employees and how do we focus on employee engagement. So the last webinar that we did before, if you missed that, we would love for you to catch a recording of that, but I'm going to do a little synopsis of it. Basically what we talked about last time were the things that make us retain employees, or the things that we need to be looking at. So we looked at things like salary, being very important right now, not maybe the most important thing, but very important to make sure that we are paying at market or above, and knowing what that is rather than what you think it is. We laugh a little bit, like if I wanted to go to Whole Foods and I think that beef tenderloin should cost $9 a pound, it doesn't anymore. It costs $25 a pound. So just because I think it should cost $9 doesn't mean that that's the market rate. So market rate is actually what it does cost. And so, when we work with people, we actually do that for you. But it's really important to know what that is. So make sure that people are at the right salary. Also, health benefits, important for 70% of people. And so it really an important thing for us to think about. 401k. This is a pretty important thing for you guys to be thinking about. If you don't have it, this might be a good add. PTO, everybody knows that works with us that PTO is my favorite lever that we have. Something that we call levers, things that we can jack up or jack down based on what we need to do to make the company and your position look very, very attractive. So a great lever to use is PTO, because as a small business, we can have a lot more PTO than big businesses can, because it just costs them so much more money. So a good option for us to equalize the playing field. Career path. We need to make sure that people know and have a great career path in front of them. Flexible work location. That has been all over the news, but it's really important for us to do. We love the hybrid variety. And if you could do 1 or 2 days a week from home, we feel like that creates a lot more productivity. Flexible hours. This is really important as well. And then some odd things like what can you do to differentiate yourself? Like we have clients that have done gym memberships and financial counseling or nutrition counseling, or we have one client that brings in a yoga person on Wednesdays, just kind of some different things that they're sticky. People like to work there. Things like mentoring programs and leadership development programs we talked a lot about last time, and things like a great work environment. So those are all things that we consider for retention that were in our first webinar. But we saved the most important thing, I think, for today, because of all of those things, and all of those things are important, so we can't say that they're not. But of all those things, the most important thing is training your managers. And your managers really do need to focus on employee engagement. It's really, really important, because the number one reason people leave a job or take a job or stay at a job is because of their manager. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that as it relates to some information we have. And having a slide issue. Okay. So we're going to talk a lot about employee engagement. So let's talk about a study that was done in June of 2023. So basically, this is a Gallup study done. And remember, June, only 3 months ago. This wasn't, there's Gallup does periodic studies on employee engagement. And they survey multiple workers, thousands and thousands of workers across multiple industries. And so what they found out was that, this is a little striking, but 31% in the United States, they were thriving at work. Wow, 31% is such a low percentage. And so thriving at work in this survey means that employees found their work meaningful, they're proud to be there, they're proud of their team, they take ownership of their performance. Those are the kind of people we want on our teams. That's what we want to make happen, right? 52% said they were quiet quitting. We've heard that term in the news. So it was actually surveyed. What is that? So those employees are just kind of filling a seat and watching the clock. They put in minimum effort. They're minimally productive. They're most likely to be stressed and burn out, and they feel disconnected, right? So those are our quiet quitters. Okay, so that is over half of our workforce is quiet quitters. They're not actively disengaged, but they are not engaged. And so these are the people that are trying to find new jobs. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. And then 17% are allowed quitting. And I've never seen the statistic be this high. And these employers are actually trying to directly harm their organization. They're undercutting goals. The trust has been broken. This is a huge percentage. So again, these cause constant crisis. Now, that's probably not your clients or your employees or anybody that you work with, but it's probably those other people. But again, this is a pretty striking statistic that I think we need to take notice of. Okay, so what does this survey tell us? That was striking enough, but if people are engaged at work, that top 32%, 42% are seeking new jobs, even today in this economy. 61% are seeking new jobs when they're disengaged. So if they're in those bottom two rungs, 61% of them are looking for jobs. So if you can engage your employees, you're going to get them to not leave, most likely. For the quiet quitters, which is the majority of the workplace, right? Those middle section, 52%, what would they change about their workplace to make it a great place to work? And these were their answers. 41% said they would change the engagement and culture. And we're going to talk about that today. Number two was 28% said pay and benefits. They didn't think they were getting paid enough. They didn't like their health benefits. And 16% said well-being, which is not a term that we have used in past in HR or people leadership, but that's how they feel, right? That's if they feel too stressed, if they feel, and that could be what's happening outside of their job or at their job. But again, they would change well-being at work. They would change how many hours they're working. They would change how stressed they are, those kind of things. So since engagement and culture is such an important thing, we're going to talk about that a lot today. And then the last statistic is what I think I'd love to think more about. 70%, and we're going to think a lot about that at Innovative Outsourcing in 2024, about how to train your managers and how to really help them. So 70% of team engagement is totally driven by and attributable to the manager, not the CEO, not the director of HR, but the manager. And so what are we seeing with that? So again, another study was done in 2018 by Gallup, and this was a while back, but they believe that the results are the same. And it's important for us to relook at this, because a lot of times my clients will say, well, I don't have time to focus on employee engagement. Like, it'd be nice if they like working here, but I don't really have time to focus on that. Well, this is the ROI. This is the return on investment for focusing on that. So for teams that scored in the top quartile on engagement, 41% lower absenteeism, 40% higher quality work, 20% higher sales, 21% higher profitability, and 59% less turnover. oh my gosh, that is just such an amazing number. So I like to say, since we do HR consulting, I would love to say, hey, if I can get these numbers for you, is that enough for us to come work for you? Is that enough to pay a consultant? And everybody would say, oh my gosh, yes. But the great news here is you don't need a consultant to do any of this, and we can't do it for you, but your managers can. So that's why we're here today. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So for those of you that's read a book called It's the Manager, we're going to be focusing on a lot of those things. So, but don't check out if you have read the book, because we're going to add some extra things to that. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that means and how we actually walk some of those things out. Okay, so what we're going to go through is in this book called It's the Manager, Gallup, Clifton StrengthsFinder, Jim Clifton did a survey of what would it take to make you engaged at work? What would it take to keep you engaged or get you to a place of engagement at work? So these aren't my ideas. These aren't Jim Clifton, who was the author's ideas. These are actual results from surveying hundreds of thousands of employees that were manager level or below, right? Not owners, but manager level or below. And we're going to go through each one of those. And hopefully some of them you'll go, oh my gosh, maybe we need to take some ground on that. Okay, so I'm just going to go through them one by one. These were not ranked in order for the survey. It's just 12. We're just going to go through each one of them, and it's not like one is more important. I know what's expected of me at work. This sounds really easy, and it's amazing that it is ranked as one of these 12, or you'd think it would be, because everybody knows what's expected of them. But what we found out is, especially through the pandemic, people's jobs have changed and morphed because the world morphed, right? And our workplaces morphed, and their job descriptions didn't morph. So if I asked you the question, if you were the people leader of your company, do the job descriptions that your employees have in front of them match what they currently are doing or expected to do? If that answer is no, you actually are in a good company. About 80% of small businesses don't have working job descriptions that are accurate. What that says as part of its survey is, if we would focus more on that, it's important for us to make sure our employees know what is it that makes them successful, right? That should be part of their review process. Here was your job description, your functional job description, and then here's what you did. And this is where you excelled, this is where you didn't excel, those kind of things. So again, if we don't tell them what's expected of them for success, they're not going to be able to be successful. So job descriptions are important, and coming back to those during reviews, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, are really, really important. So make sure they know what they're supposed to do, especially if their job's changed lately. Make sure you have a different job description. I have the materials and equipment to do my work right. It's amazing how many clients that I'll talk to that'll say, oh my gosh, I have software from the 90s, or our computer equipment is terrible, or gosh, if we just had the up-to-date something to do what I needed to do. And so we need to make sure that we have that. Now we have to balance that with how much things cost. And I totally understand with the rise of pricing and the lower profitability because margins are squeezing. I get that. But make sure that we're asking them those questions and we're moving in that direction. Maybe you can't get them all the latest and greatest software and materials, but can we go a little bit farther so that they know that we're working towards that? I love this one. At work, I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day. I think this is one thing when I talk to my clients that they haven't even thought about. Right. And I understand that. It's hard to think about that when you have your people just doing their day-to-day work. Right. So what this means is that we need to know that people are working in their sweet spot, that they are doing the things that cause their heart to hum, that they are doing the things that they feel like they're really good at. Right. Now, for those of you that don't know, there's this rule called the 70-30 rule. And the 70-30 rule basically means that if you are doing what you love to do, now granted, you're not going to be playing golf or cooking or traveling the world during your job, most likely. But if you do what you love to do at work, right, and what you think you're good at and you think you're effective at and you do better than other people, even without thinking about it, if you do that 70% of your time in your job, then you're going to be mostly happy in your position. You're going to be mostly satisfied. And 30% of the time, obviously, you're doing things that you don't love, right? Like sometimes I have to look at our financials. I don't really love that, but it's part of my job, but it's not such a large part of my job that I hate my job, right? And so what happens is when that percentage goes from 70-30 to say 50-50, all of a sudden people get antsy and start looking for other opportunities, either within the company or outside the company, because they're no longer working in their sweet spot. And I would say most employees, they don't even know what that is. They don't even know how to articulate it. They just know that they don't like their job, right? And so it's our responsibility as people leaders to really invest in our employees enough to know them well enough, to give them tools that we need to give them to know if what they're doing is their sweet spot. I mean, you can do things like Strength Finder. You can do things like Myers-Briggs. You can even do things called like a red threads exercise, which basically is them listing 3 lists and saying, this is what I do every day that I love. And then during the week, they write down, oh, I really like when I do that task, or I really like when I get to do that strategy. And then the things that they hate, and then the things that they neither love nor hate. And so then at the end of a period of time, a week, 2 weeks, whatever, you can look at those lists and you can say, what are the red threads? What are the common things among all of those things that we do every day that I do every day? That is why I love it. You know, I love when I lead people. I love when I get to do analytical things, but I don't love when I have to do this particular task. And not that we get to give it all up, but, are we working with our employees? Are we asking them during their reviews, what do you do that you love in your job? And what is it that the things that you don't love so much? And then it could be that the things that somebody else doesn't love are the things that somebody does love. And so you can switch around some job responsibilities. But again, this is a really important one. And again, why we have to be students of our people, so that, because Bill and Karen, they have 2 totally different opinions about what makes them tick, even if they're in the same job responsibility. So it's our responsibility to be able to articulate that and help them articulate it. And so a good exercise would be doing Strength Finder or some tool like that to be able to have them understand it in the new year. In the last 7 days, I've received recognition or praise for doing good work. Okay, I have so much pushback on this sometimes because it's like, oh my gosh, it's the millennials. The millennials, they just always want all this, they always want recognition, they want praise, they want the apps that say you get a 10. This is not that. This is actually over a whole group of people that are across lots of ages, representative employees. And basically, this isn't a review every 7 days. This isn't even an app that shows you every 7 days how you're doing. This is catching people doing things well. And it's kind of an art that's been lost. So it would be interesting to see what would happen in your company if you told your leaders that what you want them to do is that once a week, you want each of them to catch people doing things well and call it out, right? And they're actionable and specific things, not just like, hey, Bill, love you, right? But instead it's, hey, Bill, saw that you put together that proposal that had that interesting clause in it that caused the client to go ahead and sign that thing the first day they got it. Great job. That was such a good idea. You really thought outside the box. Thank you so much. Again, doesn't take long, doesn't have to be put in their file, doesn't have to be recorded and documented. It's just recognition. And I think we forget to do that because we're so busy in our jobs, and maybe we haven't been trained to do that. But it's really important because my husband always says that encouragement is oxygen. So we need to make sure that we are providing encouragement and recognition for our employees. And you can't just do it once a year at a review or once every 3 months at a check-in. You have to do it often because they need to stay engaged. Now, we don't praise people for doing good work that's not doing good work. So we're not lying to people, but we are trying to look at a situation and catch people doing great things. That isn't too hard. We should also do that with our spouses. We should do that with our kids. We should do that with our friends. Are we doing that? It's amazing, I think, what we would change the culture and tenor of our companies and our families if we would spend some time doing that. Okay, next. My supervisor or someone at work seems to care about me as a person. I like to say I've been in HR for, more years than I can imagine. And we, about 10 or 15 years ago, decided that there was going to be this line we drew between work and home. And the reason we were drawing that line is because we were really worried about lawsuits. We were really worried about the litigious nature of what was going on in the world. And so we decided as HR and as leaders, that work is work, is home. And so we are not going to ask people at work about things going on at home because, we didn't want to get into anything that might land us in hot water. So what this particular finding from the study shows is that that was a bad idea, right? Because the people in our survey, the survey really wanted somebody to care about them as a person, not about them as an accountant or a plumber or, what they could do for the company, right? Because that looks a little self-serving, but they just wanted somebody to care about them, right? And maybe we do too. So are we doing that? And what somebody asked me for like a practical way to handle that. So my practical way to handle that is take somebody out for coffee or lunch that's your employee, somebody on your team once a week, and don't ask them about work. Ask them about their home, ask them about what's going on with their kid who is playing baseball, ask them about, how things are going. I mean, don't ask them about things like, religion or politics, or let's keep away from those things. I mean, college football would be fun. That's always a good one to talk about, but, just something so that we show that we care about them as a person. And spending some time doing that, I believe if my people leaders could just spend a lunchtime or a coffee once a week with their people, it would change the fires we have to put out later. Matt, who works on our team, he always likes to say, we're tired of putting out HR fires. We'd really like to fireproof the room. And so these things we're talking about are really fireproofing the room. Because if you have spent time with your employee at a coffee and finding out about them and seeing how they're doing and finding what makes them tick, when something negative comes up a little bit later, it's going to be so much easier to work through. Because you're going to now know them better and they're going to trust you. Because sometimes when you ask them for coffee and you're talking about their life and their family and those kind of things, you are creating trust. And for those of you that have read 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, which if you haven't by Patrick Lencioni, you need to, because it really shows that trust is the bedrock of a great workplace. And so these are the opportunities when you're catching people doing things good and when you're taking them out for coffee. That's a great opportunity for us to establish trust with people. And trust and establishing that will help a whole lot of issues that'll happen in the future, because issues happen. But if you have that trust with that person and they know that you care about them, then it'll be worked through so much easier. So take one of your employees to coffee. And if you're a CEO watching this, and if you have a whole organization that reports to you, the best way for you to get your people to do that is for you to do that, right? So if you have the CFO, the CMO, the CHRO working for you, and you haven't done that with them, and you haven't shown them praise or recognition for doing good work, and you haven't taken them out for coffee or lunch, no wonder they're not taking their people out, because leadership is caught, and so is the culture. So make sure as the person at the top that you're actually modeling that. There's someone at work who encourages my development. Okay, so what people that are employees, they're saying here, they're screaming out like, I want somebody to care about me. I want somebody to know something about me. And I want somebody to care about what I'm becoming, right? So what's my development? It could be when you are doing a review, one of the things you should say is, how would you like to grow this year? How can I come alongside you and help you get better at what you are? And somebody may say, well, I've always wanted to do public speaking. Okay, are we sending them to a public speaking class? Or, I've always wanted to learn something about this other area of the business. Okay, I can partner with you with somebody that works over there so you can learn that. Or, I have a problem when I meet with people, I'm very shy. And so I'm not very good with clients at first. Okay, well, let's work on some development for that. Again, this doesn't have to be very expensive stuff. There are webinars, there are books, things that are almost free to help people. But are you asking the question, how can I help your development? How can I help who you're going to be? I like to say that we as leaders of people are kind of the most blessed people in the world, because we get to get people here in their career and they leave us here, right? So we have this period of time. It could be a week. We hope not. It could be 10 years. It could be 30 years. It could be 40 years, right? So we get this opportunity and it's a window in somebody's life and we get to affect them greatly. we get to develop them, we get to encourage them, we get to give them oxygen and make sure that they are becoming who they need to be, right? And that is such an honor, right? And so we need to make sure that we are taking them from where they are and where they want to be, and we need to help them towards that goal. Have you ever had that leader? If you think back on all your years about, wow, that was the best leader I ever had, because that leader saw something in me that I didn't even know I had, or that leader, pushed me. That leader was for me. And that's the big word, was for you. And you get the opportunity to be that leader. Or you can just be the busy leader that doesn't do any of this, and you get your work done, but then nobody even remembers that you were their leader, or they remember it negatively. So we get to choose which kind of leader we're going to be. And I'd like to be that leader worth remembering, right? That leader where we encourage people, we make people look back and go, oh my gosh, I had the best leader. And you get that opportunity there with that development. Okay, next. At work, my opinions seem to count. This is such an interesting thing because, we used to have I don't know if you worked with when I did in the 90s, and you had that little suggestion box out in front of the HR area, and you could just, write something and stick it in the suggestion box. And then you never, ever heard about it again. And it was kind of like, well, that was a black hole. Well, we need to make sure that we are not only soliciting our opinions about how our company is doing from our employees, but we also then need to go back around with that and say, this is why, this is what happened. And this was a result of Jenny's suggestion to our company that we do this. And so, thank you, Jenny, for that suggestion. We hadn't seen that, we adopted that. Or if let's say it's a suggestion that isn't going to fly, to go back to, Bob and say, hey, Bob, that was such a great suggestion. Thank you so much. We're not going to be able to do that because the cost on that was exceeding something, and we aren't going to be able to do that. But hey, keep those suggestions coming, because I really, really appreciate it. And it really means a lot to us that you would have taken some time to do that. So again, we find that great leaders know that the best ideas often come from the frontline employees. So are you soliciting that? Is that part of your review process? Do you ask them in their reviews? If you work with us to do reviews, one of the things we send out ahead of time is a kind of not a survey, but a questionnaire to the employees. And the employees get to answer questions like, if I were king for the day, what would I do? What are the things I think I'm doing well? We have a whole battery of questions, but one of them is, if you were king for the day and you could do something different with our company, or you could add a product line, or you could do something different, what would that be? And so make sure that you are reading those things and you are making that happen. So I encourage you to do that. Next, the mission or purpose of my company makes me feel that my job is important. Such an interesting statement that we as leaders have the responsibility to explain why the executive assistant, why her role is incredibly important, not only to the success of our company, but why then the success of our company is important to the world, right? So that's a pretty big job, and it's kind of hard to do sometimes. But it's our responsibility, because people want to know that they matter. When they show up 8 hours a day and they drive 1 hour each way to work, that 10 hours, they want to know that that matters to something, right? That isn't just making a paycheck, which is awesome, but they want to know more than that. So how do we make sure that it's easy sometimes to make that salesperson understand how much their job really impacts the company? But are we making sure that the janitor, the executive assistant, the accountant, all those people that are kind of in the background making all the things run, that their job is very important to the success of the company? And then if we can tie that to the purpose of the world, and that doesn't mean that we all have to work for the Red Cross, that would be awesome, but it means that we have to show that what we do is important. And it could be that you give back 1% of your profits, or you work with the homeless ministry or homeless organization in this time of year, and you volunteer there, or if you get 12 new jobs and you were able to do those, you work for a nonprofit for free, those kind of things. So again, people want to know that we're helping the good of people, and making a profit's great. and that is keeping everybody employed. I love that. But how do we make sure that that happens? And this survey shows that that's important. My associates or fellow employees are committed to doing quality work. Okay, this boils down to, if you have employees who are sucking the wind out of an organization, either culturally or work-wise, you need to get rid of them if they cannot be developed. So we're going to talk about it a little bit later in something I do called the 3 lists exercise. But we need to make sure that the employees know that poor performers, or even worse, great performers that have bad attitudes, are not tolerated at the company, because everybody's work will dumb down to the least effective and least great attitude employee. So they don't want to work places where, oh my gosh, it's Bill again. We have to cover for Bill because he can't get his job done, right? Nobody likes that. That kills engagement, right? Or, well, they're putting up with Fred because he always gets the best numbers for sales, but man, he won't come to the meetings. And when he does, he's ballistic about stuff and nobody wants to hang out with him. But because he keeps producing good numbers, well, we give him a pass and we go, oh, it's really important to have a great culture and to have great attitude, but not for him. We'll give him a pass. Okay, that's not how to drive employee engagement. That's one of the number one reasons people leave jobs, is because management is giving a pass to people they shouldn't. I have a best friend at work. This is one of those it's so interesting that it's on here, because it's something that we can't really make happen, right? Some of these we can make happen, like we can take our people to lunch and ask them how they are, but we can't really make this one happen. But we can create an environment where it happens. A lot of times it's like I told you in the last webinar, I'm a big fan of hybrid work. More so than fully remote work, even though my company is fully remote, which is funny, because I know the work that it takes to create relationships with people on your team if they don't see each other. So if you can create an environment where they do see each other. I had one client, this was so funny. So one of the things I do is, and my team does, is sometimes we go in and do culture audits, where we get to go in and we get to spend 20 minutes with about 10 or 15 employees that are kind of randomly chosen. And it's all confidential. And I get to ask questions like what's going well, what's not going well, not mainly like how the company is performing, but how does it feel to be an employee here? And it's amazing what people tell me. And I do it in behest of the CEO, who then I aggregate the data, don't give the names of who said what, and we kind of have a benchmark of how are things going here, like how does it feel to work here. But anyway, one of the things that we tell people to do is like do a Friday breakfast. Do like, you bring in Chick-fil-A and everybody sits and eats together on Fridays or Tuesdays or whatever. And so you have a time where people just don't go to their offices or their cubes and stick in their earphones and work, right? And so one of my clients was saying, well, we do that. We did that a year ago after you told us to do that. And I was like, but I was talking to their employees and I was like, tell me about that. And they said, oh, everybody just goes to the kitchen, gets their Chick-fil-A, goes to their offices and starts working. I'm like, okay, that is just a waste of money. So how are we creating an opportunity for people to have best friends, right? We can all think back, at least I can think back to a time that I was going to leave a job and I didn't, because it was so fun working with the people I was working with. So keep that in mind. It's sticky. Working with people you love, that's sticky. In the last 6 months, somebody at work has talked to me about my progress. Okay, remember earlier we were catching people for doing things good, and that was just randomly. That was, really recognizing people right when something happened. This is actually creating reviews. I say 6 months here. Well, they say 6 months here. I think that's really important. But this is a review that people know that they've been reviewed. It's written. You sit down and you actually have a review. It's not, a person that I'll say, oh, I hear you're reviewed once a year. And they'll be like, no, I haven't ever been reviewed. And then I'll go to their manager and they're like, oh yeah, I took them out to eat and said they were doing a great job. I'm like, that is not a review. So we need to make sure we do written reviews with great information. If you don't know how to do that, or if you're confused, if you're doing it well, we can help you with that. It's something that we can bring to the table for you, or you can read books about it or whatever, but just don't not do it because it's really, really important. I like to see those every 6 months, a written review, and then I like to do check-ins at least quarterly on the other quarters. A check-in is kind of like a very short review. A review, that should take about 45 to 50 minutes. And again, of that 45 to 50 minutes, 30 minutes of that should be you encouraging and telling them how great they're doing. That people, if you have your people dread reviews, when you need to change that up. People should think that their best day at work is the day they get reviewed. Maybe not the poor performers, but that should only be like a very small percentage of your population. They should be like, oh my gosh, I love my review day. Okay, the last one is this last year, I have had opportunities to learn and grow. Okay, this is a little different than what we talked about the development, where we were asking them how they wanted to be developed. Well, what this bullet point means that these people asked for in the survey is that they wanted opportunities to do something new. People don't love anymore to be in the same job for 30 years. They don't want to do that. Right? So there might be a small percentage of the population that does, but most don't. So what are we doing to make sure that that people have opportunities to do something different or to grow? That doesn't mean you have to totally change up their job, or you have a career path where, okay, you're an accountant and now you're an HR person. Okay, that's not a good idea anyway. A lot of companies do that. Don't do that. But anyway, so this is just, I want to add something to your plate that you may be interested in. So what are there things that you could add to them? Maybe, okay, you really want to be a public speaker. So let's, in your development, we've developed you to do that. So why don't we have you kick off our company meetings once every 6 months? And so you can be the MC, right? So what are the other things that you could do? You could grow in, hey, I'm an individual contributor, but I want to be a people leader one day. Or there's some books, some things that I can do to get ready to do that. Oh, there's so many great webinars. They're inexpensive. There are so many great books that we can give to people. I love this one client that I work with. They don't have a ton of money for development. And so we had their manager start doing book studies with their people. So once a week, at a lunchtime, they go through a book, and they've been going through a lot of different things. Raving Fans is one of my favorite. If you want to do customer service, either internal customer service or external customer service. I love 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I love Ideal Team Player. That's by Patrick Lencioni as well. And that really shows people how to be a great team player, and then how to identify possible future team players, which is phenomenal. So great book for that, for all of your people leaders. One of the things that the books that I'm really working with right now is called The Deadly Sins of Employee Retention. I know that sounds like you would fall asleep with that, like next to your bedside table. But it actually is really good. It's by Mark Murphy, so it doesn't cost very much. So it's kind of a fun thing you could get, and it is it's worth your read. It's about some of the things we talked about today, just from a different perspective. So again, book studies are great, and it gives people the opportunities to learn and grow. Especially if you have young people, you need to identify that. I mean, I love the $10,000 or $12,000 programs that you can send your people to. That's awesome. But if you can't do that right now, there are lots of different things that you can do that'll fit in your budget and in your time constraint. Okay, so those are the 12 items from Gallup, but I wanted to add a couple of things because if I were you in this last month of the year and you're a leader in your company, I would do my number one tactic advice is the 3 lists. I love this one. It is, you should take 3 lists, and you can do this electronically. I like it tactically, like actual 3 pieces of paper, but you don't have to. And you and your leadership should put every one of your employees on one of these 3 lists. So list 1. Now that's the list of, if somebody came and gave me as the leader a resignation letter, I would accept that gratefully. But then as soon as they left my office, I would cry. I would go home to my husband and say, there's no way that I can continue the company. And I am devastated. And the reason why is because these people on list number 1, they're your right hands. They're your company culture. They're the people that when we work with you, if we ask, is there somebody in your company that embodies your culture and who you love working for you that we could talk to, right? As recruiters, we love to do stuff like that so that we can really understand a company. So is there a person we can talk to? This is that person. That could be your COO. It could also be the janitor. It could also be somebody in between, right? So it doesn't matter what the position is, but they just get it, right? They get the company, and you would be heartbroken if they were gone. That's list one. List three, we're jumping over list two. List three, now these are the people that if you got that same resignation letter from them, you would, nicely take it, you would close the door, and then you would have a party by yourself. And then I would call my husband and I would say, hey, we're going out to dinner. We're having a great drink because, oh my gosh, they finally self-selected out and I don't have to pay unemployment. So again, that's a person on list three. These are the people that probably don't need to be working there. 6 months is all they should stay on list three, because in 6 months, you should be actively working towards developing them and changing them and doing performance reviews every Friday, making sure they understand what they're doing wrong, and then really trying to train them up to be in list two that we're going to talk about in a minute. But if you can't, this is the key, but if you can't, then they need to be exited from the company, because they'll find a company that they would be better for. And again, that they could be on list number three because they are bad at their job, or they could be on list three because they have a terrible attitude. And I think it's worse if you leave people on list three with a terrible attitude and don't get rid of them. So 6 months, that's as long as you should have them on list three. Now, list two, this is kind of a bell curve, right? So 85% of your people should be in list two. That means that they are getting paid well for what they do. They offer you great work for what they do. They're not your top performers, but they're great performers, and you're so glad to have them. That's kind of the bread and butter of what we do. So I like to say that we need to focus all of our efforts that we've been talking about these last two webinars, not employee engagement, as well as all of the retention tools that we talked about with salary and PTO, all of those things, for all of our employees, for 100% of our employees. Well, maybe not list three, but the other percentage of our employees. But for list one, these are our great performers. These are the people that we would absolutely have a terrible day if they gave us the resignation letter. Then we need tactic number two, and that is our individual retention plans. So for every one of these top performers, we should have an individual retention plan. The staff should decide on the individual retention plans to keep the top 5% of the employees. So this is the top 5%. These are the people with the great attitude and that do their job great. So the staff decides. And when I say staff, that's the leadership staff, right? It could just be you if you're the CEO and there's only 12 people in the company. But it could be if you have a leadership team of 4, then you guys decide that together. Again, these are the top performers, and we have to be students of our people. And we need to make sure that we know what makes them tick, because we need to make sure we're keeping those people. And everybody's going to have everybody in this. So let's say you have 3 top performers. Well, Susie the reason why Susie's there is because she may, be your greatest salesperson, but she has 3 kids at home that have to go to band and all kinds of things. So to give her more jobs that she will have to work a lot of hours will kill her, right? That'll cause her to quit. So we need to be a student of Susie and decide, I can't overwork her, because that's the deal killer for Susie. But for, Jan may love the challenge. She may want to work the 80 hours a week and be highly compensated for that. So are we giving her all kinds of more opportunities to make great amount of money? Make better bonuses and that kind of stuff, because we know she wants to work 80 hours a week. So let's figure out how we incentivize that. Again, we need to be students of our people to know those kind of things, to know what makes them tick, and to be able to put incentives in place for them to stay. Because I like to say that if we have done an individual retention plan on one of your best employees, and you've done that, and every year you've gone over that, just kind of like you would do it for retaining your top client. Well, if you do that with your employee and then they choose to leave, at least you think, oh, well, I did everything I could, right? I hate that she's leaving, but I did everything I could. But those phone calls that I get from my clients where they were blindsided. They didn't come up with a retention plan. They hadn't even thought about the fact that they were overworking their best employee and that didn't work for their lifestyle. And then they call me and they're like, oh my gosh, Cindi, I don't know what I'm going to do. She's leaving in 2 weeks and she's kind of the heart and soul of the company. Well, if we haven't done those individual retention plans, then it's bad on us, right? It's bad on us as leaders. So make sure that that's something you do in 2024, because it's kind of an important thing for you to keep your people and to know that even if they do leave, and great employees do leave sometimes, but we've done everything we can to keep them. And then our last tactic that we're going to talk about is actually not retention, and it's actually not anything about employee engagement, but it is something that's near and dear to my heart, because as you know, we are recruiters. We're recruiters and staffing people, and we have spent lots and lots of years trying to pair great employees with great employers. We're really careful what employers we work with that share those values of wanting to be a great place to work for their employees. And so we want to make sure that our employers, our clients, are very successful when they interview people. And so what we wanted to just throw in here, just because I kind of do this every time I speak, is just making sure that you understand that when people come to you and they do an interview with you, that's your audition as a company. It used to be that, oh, they're just so lucky to get an interview with me, right? Now it's flipped, right? And you might say, oh, well, I just saw an article in the Wall Street Journal that, unemployment rates might be coming down because of the economy and all kinds of things. But what I would say to you is the A players, they're the people that you want to have as your employees, not the B's, C's, and D's, but the A players, they're going to have all kinds of opportunities. They're not having opportunities. So you need to make sure that those candidates, those A-level candidates, take your jobs. So the way your candidate is treated by your staff during an interview is really important. Not only the communication before and after. I love to say, I just talked to a group of people at a big chamber, and one of the things I said was, what if you told all the people that were hiring at your company that the minute that candidate left their office, that they were supposed to write them a thank you email? And they're like, wait, that's not what it was supposed to be about. Like the candidate writes the thank you email. Oh no, let's flip that. So we try to work with our clients to really understand that we're having to flip the script to get the A candidates to come to us. So make sure that communication is good. If they interview on a Monday and they don't hear anything back from you till Wednesday, Friday, the following Monday, they're going to think that you're not very responsive and they're going to take another offer. So again, make sure that communication is positive, that is timely, and that you make decisions quickly. Salary negotiation. If you've posted the job either through us or through another recruiter at or by yourself at $80,000 to $100,000, and then you decide, well, let's get a deal off this girl. Let's make her $70,000. That automatically looks like to that employee that you're not keeping your word. You may think it's like a deal, but the way that the employment world looks at that now is that you are not a person of your word. So be careful as you choose those salary ranges, because you should give an offer within that range. And if they have all the qualifications that they need to have that job, and if they have had, all the schooling, all the experience and everything else, it actually should be at the top of that salary level that you posted. And then how you make the offer is really, really important. So a lot of our times, some of our clients will say, hey, just make the offer for us, and we'll follow it up in an email. So let me give you two scenarios. Scenario number one is the one who we call and we say, hey, we're so excited to give you the offer for the controller position, and they're excited to have you, and they're going to follow it up with in writing, but it's $125,000 and they want you to start as soon as possible. Okay, that's scenario number one. Not bad, just not as great as it could be. Scenario number two, now that's when the person who is the hiring manager, they make that phone call, right? So they say, hey, we are so excited to offer you this position as a controller. We looked through, using our recruiter, we looked through 120 resumes. We did 15 in-person interviews. We looked all over. We've been at this for a month or a month and a half. We wanted somebody that was going to embody the culture as well as have all the skills we needed. And we are so excited that we found you. And we really think, our entire leadership team feels like we were exactly all in line, that you are the person that we would like to help you take our company to that next level as our controller. So we know that you have a lot of other options out there, and we hope you will totally consider us. But it's been an honor to be in the process with you. And we'd love to have any questions that you have. And we just really hope you'll highly consider us. Okay, that's just a really different scenario. So how you make the offer is really important. So again, I leave you with that, saying that if you do get the opportunity to interview a great candidate, it's your responsibility and to your benefit to really spend some time on how are we going to serve our candidates, and how are we going to what I like to say to my clients is make sure that through the interview process that the candidates fall in love with you as an organization. So whatever you need to do to have the candidates fall in love with you, and then you can choose who you want later, but you want every one of them to fall in love with you. So again, just a little side note, really has nothing to do with retention, but again, it's intentional. Because if you're not intentional on HR, if you're not intentional on things like what the interview looks like at your company, if you're not intentional on individual retention plans, you are not going to be successful. So, okay, so what's the payout? An employee that stays, a candidate that says yes, and a workplace full of A players. Because somebody will say, like, I have less than market rate for a job. We don't offer much, PTO. Honestly, our culture is marginal. Can you find me somebody? My answer is usually no as a recruiter, because we don't love to work with those companies. But yeah, you can find anybody, right? But we want A players, right? We want A players. And so if we want to do that, we've got to be intentional and do the things that we've talked about. So again, glad to have you. We would love to entertain. I think we have 5 or 6 minutes that we can do some questions. So I'm going to bring Matt in. And if you have any questions, I should have said this before, you can put them in chat. So I think we have a couple of questions already, but if you have any additional questions, throw them in chat and I can answer those.
Yeah, and you can throw those in the chat section or in the Q&A section as well. But we did have a couple that were already put in, a couple actually before the webinar even started. So I think we always get questions about millennials, right? Which I am one of them. But once somebody wrote in, I see millennials as just wanting promotions, not a career path. What is something that I can do to help for that?
Yeah, so I have a different kind of view on that. I am a proponent of millennials. I don't know how to say that. I have one here, right? Matt. But I feel like what we found in all these surveys that were done by Gallup and different organizations is that everybody kind of wants the same thing. They want to know and be known. They want to succeed in their position, and they want to know that there's a place for them to go from a career path standpoint. So it really was agnostic to whether they're millennials or whether they're Gen X? Yeah, probably Gen X. Yeah. But anyway, so, it was kind of agnostic to that. So I would say that the things that we're doing for millennials, they like feedback, right? Because they're used to kind of the social media culture where they get better feedback, but we should be giving everybody feedback. We talked about that, catching people doing things well. And if they don't do something well, you handle that right then, right? So again, we should be doing all those things anyway. But I don't know that they're looking for a promotion right away. I think they're looking for somebody to tell them they're doing a great job. And the way they think that should come is just a promotion, right? Because we don't have a lot of leaders that are speaking life into their people. But if they would have check-ins and they would be getting kudos, and it could very well be that they get some money and not the promotion, right? Instead of waiting 3 years to give them a huge bump in salary, maybe every year we give them a little bit of bump if they're really good at what they do, right? Give them targets, making bonuses, those kind of things. So again, I don't know that they need to have that huge promotion, but I do think that oftentimes we see that if we just communicated more, spent more time with them, that it would be much better.
Yeah, that's great. All right, and then the second one we have is I have an employee that never wants to engage with our team. What do I do about this? How do I make them come to events and parties?
Yeah, this one's a hard one. I get this every once in a while because you always have you have some of your employees who are like, "Oh, I want to be at every picnic and I want to be at every service event and I want to be, I just want to be team, right?" And then we kind of do things for them. And then you have some people that are like, "Yeah, I never want to participate in anything." And so I do have some clients that have made them participate. Okay, I don't love that. Like, you have to come to the bowling thing on Friday night. Well, okay, let's not do that, right? Let's, not do that. However, if you have somebody that says, I don't really love employee meetings, so I'm just going to come remotely and I'm just going to be online and I'm going to turn my video camera off. Okay, that's a no, right? That's culture. So you have to kind of determine that delineation between the things that we're going to require of our people and the things that we're going to let our introverts or people that don't really there might be some introverts that don't love those social situations. You might have some extroverts that don't love work social situations. So you just need to be, I guess, a student of those people, but you also don't need to acquiesce so much that that's bad behavior, because it's really important that everybody participate in some events that are like work events, so that we have good camaraderie and we create team.
Yeah, perfect. All right, and then we got time for one more. So this one actually, I read it first and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. There's a lot of stuff on that list, right? So you had 12 different items of employee engagement. They said, what would you focus on first from that whole list?
Yeah. So, oh gosh, it's the end of the year, and I would say it. Oh, so many things I'd want to do. I would say tell your leaders to spend December, if they have 15 employees, writing a handwritten thank you note to each one of their employees, telling them specific reasons this year that you're thankful for them, specific things that they've done or attitudes that they have that have helped the company, like your honesty or your positivity or those kind of things. This is how it's impacted us. Just a handwritten note. It doesn't have to be 7 pages long, and send it to them. So I think I would do that. And then the second thing I would think I would do is take everybody to coffee, right?
Yeah,
Lunch, coffee. If they're in a different location, do a Zoom where you order them lunch and they're, at their house with lunch. But if there's any way to see them, that's the way to do it. But just and we're not asking them about their jobs at this point. We're just asking them about their lives. Anything I can do to help you, what's going on. Have you taken any great trips lately? How's your son doing in Little League? All of that kind of thing. So, let them be known and give them some encouragement as oxygen. Give them a handwritten note. And it's amazing and it doesn't cost any money. I mean, I guess the lunch costs money and the piece of paper, but that's it.
yeah. Well, perfect. Well, it's 11 o'clock on the dot. Thank you, everyone who was able to join us today. And if you want us, we'll send this copy out to everyone who registered for the event and who attended live. So if you ever want to send it out to anybody else, we'll be giving that link or the video. I don't know if we're going to put it on YouTube or host it ourselves, but we'll be sending that out. But thank you guys so much. These are always really fun, and we get to kind of share what we do in groups that we speak to all over Atlanta and Charlotte. So thank you.